Hello and welcome to Series 2 of Old Dog New Tricks. This series there are going to be shocks, stunts, and special effects. Not really. It's essentially going to be more of the same. Me whittering on in my office about racing cars and sim racing, and then I'm going to unleash those meanderings onto the internet in the full knowledge that a proportion of the people that actually do engage with it are going to be frickin' lunatics who are equally at home commenting on YouTube videos as they are barking at the moon. But if that sounds like something you're into, hit like and subscribe and let's begin. In the first series, I tried to win a fully funded race season in the VW Racing Cup with Team Hard Racing. Despite my preparation, which involved months of keep fit, a stringent diet, hours of sim racing and considerable expense, it was cancelled. But due to the fun I had along the way, for a while I was totally at one with this and all was well in the world. But as time's passed, I've come to realise that I still want to know if I've got what it takes to become a racing driver. Luckily for me, as with the first series where every episode sort of organically led to the next, an opportunity has presented itself. Some kind chaps at a place called Equinox Sim said they could do just that. They have a sim that uses an Oculus Rift, an rFactor 2 and a host of other gizmos and gadgets that they could use to assess my abilities as a racing driver. So I dusted off my camera and I headed down to Kent to find out how they got into it.
We've all been involved in racing a long time. Will's a racing driver. I was a Formula 1 design engineer for a while. Kind of the natural evolution of things was simulations, kind of big, kind of important, ties a lot of services together. So that's really where the foundations are.
So you didn't buy an Oculus Rift for a laugh and then went, do you know what, we could use this.
We could have a bit of fun on this.
Yeah.
No, but there is an element to why the VR came about because of that.
That's a yes then, but that said, it became very apparent as I'm sort of taking in my surroundings how much of a serious facility this has now become. Whether the Oculus Rift was a laugh or not, it's very serious. And I'd started to sort of feel a bit out of depth. So I decided to ask Will what sort of people normally come and use their facility.
Anybody from average sim players to club racers all the way up to professional touring car drivers, single-seater racing drivers, various different GT racing drivers. With the scope that we have, the ability to coach and have drivers in here is very wide.
Will there, or as I'm going to call him, Silent Bob, because he doesn't say much, but trust me, when he does, it's well worth the wait. But at this point we had to stop the interview because one of those customers turned up. British touring car driver Chris Smiley. I say turned up, he sort of exploded into the room like a Duracell bunny on crack, but eventually they managed to hit him with enough tranquiliser darts to down a bull elephant and he sort of calmed down enough to get into the seat. And it gave me my first chance to not only see the Oculus Rift and rFactor 2 in perfect unison, but it gave me a chance to see how a bona fide racing team uses them to improve their drivers and their cars. It was all very impressive, but one of the things I found particularly interesting was the VR not only allows the driver to experience the changes and the setup and everything like that, but it also means that rather than have to explain them to his chief engineer, you can just sit him in the seat and let him feel them for himself. So while Ben Taylor, his number one, was dinging around Brands Hatch GP, I took the opportunity to ask Chris why he decided to use Darren and Will.
To be at the front of the BTCC now, everything needs to be good. You just don't need to be a good driver, you need to be a good driver, you need to have a good team, you need to have a good sim that you go and use, and you need to have a good guy who knows how to work the sim. And I feel that coming here, it has all them things, you know, it's got a friendly atmosphere and you've got somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, just not someone clicking the button and say, go and have a buzz around and see how it goes. You know, you've actually got somebody who says, you know, you're braking a bit early, you're braking a bit late, you're going a bit fast, you're going a bit slow. And that's what it takes, you know, you're only as good as the person who's teaching you to tell you what to do, you know, and I find that coming here works really, really well. We have made a massive step forward in the car and I've also made a massive step forward in my driving. Thanks to this thing here, you know, the simulation thing, you know, it's really, really helped me.
And as quickly as it appeared, he did his session and the BTCC's answer to Tigger bounced off. Aside from his bouncy nature, I learnt a couple of things about Chris. Number one, his enthusiasm and energy is somehow managed to transfer to the tyres because he's the only person I seem to have witnessed using a sim that was able to warm his tyres literally in the pit lane. Most of us require a lap, not Chris. Straight in the tyres. The second thing is he's ridiculously flexible. Now, while he was sat in that seat, he managed to lift his leg directly in front of his face so he was looking at his knee. Unfortunately, I didn't get it on video because I just don't think it's right to ask a relative stranger,
can you do that thing you did with your leg again? I want to get it on the camera, don't I?
So with crazy Chris Smiley presumably caged in the back of a van and on his way to a racetrack somewhere, we decided to carry on with the interview. Now I had started to notice a few subtle differences between their rig and mine. So as you can see, the only real difference is the VR. So with that in mind, I decided to ask them why they decided to use it and how it helped their business.
But obviously what we're trying to achieve is as much realism and much immersion into a virtual world as possible so that you believe you're driving a real racing car. So what you get back from the sim, what you see and what you feel is as much like driving a real racing car as possible. The VR helps a lot because you get much more of a feel for the car, and the sophistication of the latest simulation software allows for the car to feel much more real and you feel much more immersed in the car. So from an engineering point of view, subtle changes can be felt like you would in a real car.
They talked about engineering, so I wanted to find out what sort of information they used in rFactor 2.
You know, we've been to the wind tunnel, we know the CAD data, we know every single suspension point on the cars, we've dynoed the shock absorbers, we know the shock absorber graphs and characteristics, we know things like friction, we know Dunlop provide us with tyre data.
I'll admit at this point I started to lose my way a little bit. Some of the things they were saying sounded like they were speaking a different language, and I wasn't even sure at this point if we were still talking about rFactor 2. Maybe they had a different sim. I mean, I'm a fan, but I didn't think all of this was possible within the game version, you know, the one we all buy. It seems a bit ridiculous. Then I realised they were still talking. So in order to try and keep that a secret, I thought I'd just check we were still talking about rFactor 2.
Yeah, it's incredibly sophisticated for what appears to be a game.
A game, yeah, just a game you buy on Steam.
But it is...
That's it, yeah.
Like Angry Birds.
But it is a proper simulator, really, that they've packaged up.
Phew, I don't think they noticed, although they probably will now. So it would appear that these witch doctors are not only able to understand the hieroglyphics that are the rFactor 2 setup page, but they're able to complete the impossible, herd cats, and actually use that information to modify a car. So I wondered if they'd messed with the Clio that I was used to using at home.
It's fundamentally the same, but we've changed it. We've compared physics of the original mod to the real car and made changes so that the car mod reflects the real car more accurately. With the Clio, it was obvious that the braking was way too effective, and the lap times that Will could achieve against what the real Clio Cup could achieve was vastly different.
Okay, so what do you know offhand? Do you know what a Clio Cup lap time?
I believe it's mid-51s at...
Yeah.
Oh, mid 51s, because at home I've achieved I think a 50, so I've done that at home.
And that's with the standard off the shelf
just
model.
straight away.
Yeah. So that's too quick, essentially, I think.
Yeah, so it's not realistic. Wow, now the level of detail and data made a lot more sense, and I decided two things very quickly. Number one, these guys were operating on a whole new level of professionalism. And number two, I was going to keep the memory stick I had in my pocket with the setup I'd prepared at home and cockily brought along a massive secret. Bang that in your rig and stand back. So with the memory stick in my pocket, praying that my wife who was filming wasn't about to mention it, I sat in the machine. Now, I was determined not to be a total VR noob, and after all, I wasn't. Back in the 80s, I'd used the Tomitronic VR systems and played the classics such as Shark Attack, Space Laser Wars, and of course, Thundering Turbo. So I was determined not to come up with any VR cliches that would identify me as a first-timer.
Yeah, but that bit's focused.
That's perfectly fine.
I'm pointing like you can see it. Yeah, that over there, I feel like I'm in the Matrix.
Right now, we're inside a computer program.
Is it really so hard to believe?
So if you...
I do actually feel like Tron.
It's time I'd level with you. I took a wrong turn somewhere.
Where are you now? You know?
Yeah, I'm in sort of a weird circular room. I can see a skeleton.
Oh dear, Cedric the Mad Monk seems madder than ever today.
The problem was that even while I was still in the Oculus Rift lobby, I was so overwhelmed by the VR experience I was rendered almost speechless. Aside from cliches, the only thing I was able to say were,
There's birds outside.
Yeah.
Oh babe, can we get one of these?
After having my mind blown in the lobby, I eventually got into a car and things just got worse. I forgot that these experienced, intelligent, knowledgeable guys were there completely. I forgot why we were there. We were there to assess if I could become a racing driver. Do you honestly think a racing driver would behave like this?
What? Why did I...
What can you see?
Well, the back of the car exists. You can look. You can't grab it. It's not actually there. but the whole car exists. Now it feels really odd because I can see my arms moving at the same time, but they're not my arms. What's funny is I'm trying to hold my neck from actually touching the thing, but I guess it won't matter if I just stick my head out through the door. You can see the side of the car.
Luckily, something happened to snap me out of it. Noise and speed. While I'd been plodding around with my head hanging out the door, I hadn't been going that fast. But then... You actually feel like you're going fast. It's a little bit more terrifying. And I was gone. I was there and I was pushing. I was loving every minute of it. And the Oculus Rift added a whole new dimension to my driving. You could sort of look through corners and you could see your next braking zone. You could see your next apex and you can feel yourself gliding around the circuit. And you know what? I did all right. I didn't do too badly. But then I found out that Will had posted a time that was 1.5 seconds faster than mine. And that was it. I had a target. I had a goal. And with their help, I was going to get as close to it as possible. I swear to God, I nearly opened the door. So, Bat fans, when I arrived, I posted a time of 53.622, which at the time was a second and a half off of Will's. But during the day and during the course of the day, Will, at different points, got on the machine to show me how I should rotate the car and things like that. And in one of those sessions, unfortunately, he managed to smash his time and move the goalposts. And now his best was a 51.597. And before I tell you my time, it's important to pause here and mention something that I noticed throughout the day. It doesn't matter who sits in that seat. If it's Chris, Will, Ben, it doesn't matter. They're all trying to beat someone and it's rarely themselves. Now, as the most junior person to sit in that chair, I'd just be happy to beat my own time. That is a crock of shit. I digress. Will's new best time was a 51.597. And at the end of the day, after they'd helped me, we used all of their gizmos and gadgets and all of their expertise, patience and knowledge. My new best time was a 51.735. So like every race driver, after a session, we had a debrief and I asked them what went well.
I mean, from my point of view, it was very obvious that you didn't crash very often. And that's actually quite rare. For non-experienced racing drivers first getting in the sim, a lot of people crash at the first corner. They take some time to feel the environment, feel the controls, get a judge of the speed. So a lot of the time they're straight into the barriers. You didn't do that. You did lots and lots of laps. And when you did go off, it was sort of small offs. I'm not quite sure how to interpret that. I think that that's a big positive.
Mm-hmm. You applied progression through every run that you did on the simulator, and you built yourself up to a push pace later on in the runs, which shows that you are a lot more controlled.
What's funny about that is I feel like that is more likely due to the immersion that you give here, because even pulling out of the garage, because I could see it, because I turned my head and I could see the side of the garage, I still had that feeling of, I can't scratch the car in the garage, because it feels so real, and also the fact that you're watching, it feels more serious, and that's probably why I didn't crash as much, because
the environment.
Yeah, the environment that you give such a realistic environment, and it sounds ridiculous to say it out loud, but I felt like I was driving your car. So it was your car, so it meant that I shouldn't crash it. But it's not a real car, which is quite odd to say out loud. So all pretty positive, but ready to be sent straight into the gravel trap, I strapped in and asked them what didn't go so well.
To be honest, there was nothing that I could physically point out that was alarming. A lot of the pointers are things that you would pick up through time, repetition, and natural progression of your driving skill. One of the things maybe was your under braking and the amount of balance that you have with the rake of the car when trying to achieve rotation through the corners. And that's something that's more of an advanced thing to pick up. It's quite easy for people to just brake in a straight line, roll around the corner slowly, but when you're trying to achieve the optimal amount of rotation on a front wheel drive car without overcooking the front tyres, it becomes more difficult, you know.
Yeah, I did burn it. I mean, I'll say that about it. I'll say that about it. I may not have crashed the car, but in real life terms, I probably cost a lot of money on my front left tyre because I smashed it to pieces more than any other tyre, and quickly.
But it was striking how much of an improvement there was on that front, on some of the runs where you were getting the rotation without having to put too much lock in.
Again, that's totally down to you, because had I not been told about the tyre and had I not been told about the rotation, I wouldn't have known how to change it. So
your tyres lasted another 10 laps compared to
because
3
you
laps.
told me, because you sat me down and you said, look, this is what you're doing, this is where it's going wrong, and this is how you can improve it. So I'd asked all the questions I could. I'd stalled for long enough, and you know what? By now, I really wanted to know. And now the $1 million question. I want to be a racing car driver. Do you think it is possible?
Yes.
Yes, I think it's possible. I think it's the willingness to learn and
I'm going.
anybody that has the willingness to learn and absorb information and always find there is room for improvement, they definitely can be a racing driver, yeah, for sure.
Wow, thank you very much. That is Darren and Will from Equinox Sim. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, that's amazing. All right.
That's better than a kick in the bollocks.
I told you it was worth the wait. Silent Bob came through in the end, didn't he? But there you have it. Thanks to the Oculus Rift, rFactor 2 and 2 esteemed professionals, I now have my answer. I have what it takes to become a racing driver. So would I recommend the Oculus Rift to improve your driving experience and aid complete immersion into a virtual world? Abso-frickin-lutely. Would I recommend visiting Darren and Will and using them to help you as they helped me? 100% yes. Am I going to rush to the shops and buy my own Oculus Rift as I've just recommended it so highly? Hell no. Didn't you hear what they said? They said I could become a racing driver, and that, my friends, is exactly what I'm going to do. Now, if you've liked the video, press the like button. If you want to see more, press the subscribe button. But until next time, see you later.